Okay, so let's zoom in on the enemy character. And if you can't see the enemy character in your view, just go to the hierarchy, find the enemy, double click to get that a little bit closer. So we can see the nav mesh, the areas where the character will avoid. So the character will avoid these boulders, will avoid these benches, will not be able to walk through that fence, but has to go around it. So I think from his starting position right there, we could set a target to be around here, and then we should see the character walk through these gates down to the actual target, which is there. Okay, but in order to get our character to do that, we will have to set him up so that he can navigate along this nav mesh. So the actual nav mesh itself displays as long as we have this tab open, this navigation. As soon as we go back to the inspector, obviously that disappears. It's there purely as a gizmo. Okay, so if you click on it and switch off your gizmos, you'll notice that those disappear as well. So make sure you got your gizmo switched on, and we're going to go back to inspector. Okay, so with this character selected, enemy 1, we need to give him some components that he can work with this nav mesh. So we're going to go to component, and the first thing that we need is physics and a rigid body. Okay, a rigid body handles all physics within the game. Now, because this is a physical mesh, it requires some kind of physics properties for that character to interact with that. So without a rigid body, the character would not be able to interact with that nav mesh. We're going to make it kinematic, and we're going to switch off gravity so that the character doesn't respond to real world gravity. In other words, we don't want our enemy character to start walking and then just roll over, or maybe fly off into outer space, or whatever. That can be some of the bizarre things that gravity occasionally does in Unity. So as long as it's kinematic, it means that it's not affected by gravity forces and that kind of thing, but it can still interact with this mesh. The next thing we need is a component, physics, and a box collider, okay, which appears there. It's in the wrong position at the moment, it's too low. So you can see our box collider. We're going to make our size on the Y to be 2, so we're going to change that to 2 to make it a little bit larger, and on the Y above it, where it says center, we're just going to put that to 1. Okay, and then obviously it's in the right position. This is going to help the nav mesh detect where our character is, so it needs that box collider in order to test what's going on around it. Okay, and we also need component, navigation, and nav mesh agent. Okay, now this nav mesh agent is the very thing. It's this cylinder which we can see here in the game. This is the very thing that moves along the nav mesh. Okay, and we have various settings that we can change. At the moment, we're going to go with the default settings. We will need to change those later. Okay, but for now, we're just going to go with these. So that's everything the character needs in order to start walking along the nav mesh. What we need now is a target for the character to walk toward. So I'm just going to get into position. I might put a target, in fact I might go through this gate as well. I might put a target roughly down here. Alright, so I'm going to click game object and 3D object a cube so that I can see the actual object he's heading towards. Game object align with view. Okay, so this is where I want the character to walk towards. Just going to straighten that up a little bit, and I'm going to put it down on the ground. Now, if you set a target, it is quite important that that target is somewhere where the character can reach. So it has to be within this blue area. Also, kind of avoid having your targets like way up in the air where the character can't reach it. It has to be somewhere where the target can, where the character can actually walk into the target. Okay, so cube, I might just rename this one as target cube, something like that. We notice that it has a box collider. It's very important that we set this one to a trigger. Okay, as long as that box collider is a trigger, we can detect when the player has actually reached its target. We'll leave it with the default white material for the moment. Everything else is looking good. Now what we can do is give this cube a specific tag so that it recognizes that it's target. Now at the moment we don't have a target tag, so we need to create one. Let's click add tag. Now it's telling us the list is empty, so we're just going to click plus to add one. Let's call this let's have a look, something like enemy targets, and press enter. Okay, so tag 0 is enemy target. So let's click back on the target cube, go to the tag, and now we can select enemy target. Okay, this is done so that we can ensure that the character is heading towards the right object and not towards the wrong object. As if he collides with an object as a collision, a collider, that he knows whether that is the right target or the wrong target based on the tag. Okay, so now we're going to move over to writing the script. So probably for the next 4 or 5 videos we're going to get into some scripting. We're going to start off with the basics and we're going to work up in complexity. Okay, so I'm just going to go to assets. I've created a folder called my scripts. Going to go in there, going to right click, create, and C# script, and this one I'll simply call enemy move. Double click to open. Okay, enemy move, there we go. Just put that into place so that you can see it. Okay, so some of the stuff is already in there. It's auto-completed what you need to get started with a basic script. These are the collections that it's currently using in this script. We need to add another one to this using Unity Engine .ai in capitals. Okay, and then a semicolon on the end to tell it to complete that line. Okay, we need that in order to talk to the nav mesh. Alright, so first of all, at the top within the public class we need to create ourselves a slot in the inspector. So we need to create a slot within here where we can drag in that target, so we can tell it which target to use. So we're going to do this by serializing the field. So we're just going to open these. This is next to the P character on my keyboard on the PC. It's also, if you press shift, you get a curly bracket, so it's contained within those two. These are just called, I suppose, square brackets. Now we're going to start typing serialize field, and you'll notice it actually auto completes for us. So just press enter and it'll automatically add that. Space, it's going to want to know what type of object are we wanting to drag into this slot. So it's actually going to be a transform. Okay, in other words, it is an object that has some kind of a transform. It has an X, Y and Z value within space. Okay, that's what we're going to drag in there. And now we just give it a name. The name can be absolutely anything you want. You can come up with any name. There's no conventions to that. I'm just simply going to call this target with a capital T. And then semicolon to finish. Alright, so if we now save that, save assets, and we wait to ensure that we don't have any errors, which we don't. Okay, just go to console, just got a little bit of a warning there, and we go to our enemy character. We can now drag this script, this enemy move, onto our character. So we're going to drag it, where we're going to drag it, we'll just put it, if we can. Is it not wanting to go in there? There we go. Okay, you just have to drag it into that little line there, and it adds it to the character. What we can see, we've created this. We've created this target, and there's a slot there. Okay, it's saying non-transform. Well, that's going to be our target cube, so now we can drag that into place. So that now it recognises that the target is that cube. That object. That's where it needs to head towards. Okay, great. So we achieved that just with that one line there. Now we're going to create ourselves a new function just underneath the void update. So if you click on line 21 and press enter, okay, it's going to be void, it's not going to return anything. We're going to call this move to target, and then put in a couple of curly brackets. Okay, so this is a function which is going to move our character. So in order to do this, we need to talk to the component. We need to talk to this nav mesh agent, okay, which is on the character. It's on the enemy one character. So we need to get to that in the script. So to do that, we're going to say get component, the name of the component, so it has to be within these, okay, within and obviously this is just above the comma and the full stop. You just press shift to access those on a PC keyboard, and type in nav mesh agent. Okay, so once we've got the nav mesh agent, we're just gonna put in a couple of brackets there. We want to access any of the elements that are part of that nav mesh agent. Okay, so we can access any of those elements, and there are also some other elements that we can access as well, one of which is destination. So we want to type in destination. In other words, where should it go? Okay, and we're going to say equals target dot position. Now the target is obviously this, it's our transform, so it's telling it to move the nav mesh agent from where it currently is to the target's position. So it's simply going to move it there. Now we've created our own custom function, but to get that to work we need to call that function, which we will do in the void start. So when the game starts, or when this character starts, you will then call this function and move to the cube. So to do this, we're just simply going to type move to target, open and close brackets, and then semicolon. What that's saying is just basically run that function. Okay, and that's it. That's all we need to do. Okay, and that will actually move our character to the cube.